Hello, Internet. It is Load the Box episode, I don't know. Joined again here tonight by the marvelous and the wonderful Dustin Bako of Vikes Now, the editor and chief of VikingsTerritory.com. Dustin, seems like we have you on a lot this time of year. Probably our fault that we don't try to have you on more during the actual season, but I know me and you align pretty well in saying this is the best time of year. It is,
Yeah.
it's free agency, it's the draft, it's the process. Does Jaden Daniels suck because he had some wonky throws at his pro day? It's the best. I just love all the speculation and all of the old takes exposed that comes out. Let me start because we have a lot to get into tonight. Let me just begin with this. How have you been since our last meeting?
Oh, not bad at all. I wanted to mention this part of the season that you talked about. When I was just a fan, 10 years ago, it was always so sad when Week 18 or the playoffs, when it was over, because it felt like, well, now what am I going to do? But since I parlayed this into a job, I enjoy the off season just as much as the regular season because it's the big puzzle that comes together, and it's day by day. The NFL does a marvelous job at keeping everything relevant. Unlike any other sport, every ounce, every day of the off season has something. And so, yeah, I too love the offseason. I have been well on the basketball side of things. LeBron is my guy, and the Lakers have won 5 straight. Last year, they got hot at this time, but they used defense. This year, same level of hot, but they're using offense. But I am here to talk about the Vikings tonight, and we are 28 days. 4 weeks from right now, we will have about an hour's worth of knowing, we think, who the quarterback of the future is, hopefully with a splashy trade up the board, and I'm going to guess we're going to chat about that tonight.
We absolutely are, and it's funny you say that because as you say that, the thing going across the little scrolly ticker down at the bottom is the great debate, stick and pick or trade up. And I think that the stick and pick is in the minority. The group that want to stick and pick is definitely the minority. I think it's a fun exercise, and I'll definitely put you on the spot and kind of ask you your thoughts on that. But we're going to save that for a little bit later in tonight's show. I would be remiss if I did not mention that as of today, recording on the 28th, the Cincinnati Reds are one of the only remaining undefeated teams in the MLB. There's not too many of them, but we're one of them. So, the fighting Ellie De La Cruzes, as Will would say. And of course, if you tuned in for Will, you've probably noticed that he is not here tonight. That's okay. We've had a wonky week. We won't get into it, but let's get into the Vikings. And this is something that I don't want to say it's old news because it's still being discussed on Twitter, and it's still being discussed, how it's going to impact the draft. And, maybe somebody was in love with a 5th round prospect running back. Maybe now the Vikings don't take him because they did sign Aaron Jones. I want to get your thoughts. Specifically, we'll start with Aaron Jones, then we will go to Shaq Griffin. But starting with Jones, how do you think this impacts the Vikings draft plans? And also, what impact do you think he has at age 29 with an injury history? Do you see him being an every down back? Or how do you see him fitting into this Vikings puzzle?
I believe it impacts the would-be draft plan significantly because now, whether you like it or not, the Vikings have 5 running backs plus a new kickoff rule, which means Kene Nwangu will make the roster when he could have been a bubble guy. And so between Dwayne McBride, Ty Chandler, Aaron Jones, and Myles Gaskin, they have enough running backs. And if they didn't have Aaron Jones, you and I would be on shows like this chatting about, are they just going to do the same thing and hope that it's better? Because in back-to-back seasons, they've ranked 27th per rushing DVOA, which is an efficiency metric that measures, NFL stats in general. And if we didn't have Aaron Jones, then I would be eyeing the first pick after the quarterback trade. I would say, all right, you probably got to go get your running back. And at that point, it would be, a 4th rounder? You'd get a pretty decent one. But now, I believe they have a 1-year grace period. I didn't love the Aaron Jones move because it was up to $7 million for a guy who will be 30 in December. He was hurt last year. When he got back, he was ultra hot, really hot in December and January. So that we have that going for us. If it were up to me, I would have nominated Ty Chandler as a quasi bell cow. Braylon Allen is my guy from this draft. I was hoping before the Aaron Jones move that they would get him because he's so big and so fast. But I'm not banking on that anymore because they have Aaron Jones. I respect the move because it showed me that they understand that they haven't been doing well running the football. And it doesn't matter if they draft Drake May or trade for Kyler Murray, like Mike Tannenbaum said. Your offense is never going to be that good if you can't run the football.
Right.
I think most of us will hope that this season they can bring it up to about 16th in the league and just be average, because then you can have a good offense. So as I digest it, I'm okay with the Aaron Jones move. To answer the last part of your question, I think he'll get about 60% of the load, and then Ty Chandler should get 35 to 40, and then whoever mops up a little bit, maybe we'll actually see Dwayne McBride. So didn't love the Aaron Jones move, but there really hasn't been a move this Vikings offseason that I've been like, what? Are you kidding me? That sucked. Not at all. I really like the fact that Aaron Jones got hot at the right time of year last year, and he's a defector from the Packers, and we love those. We hope that he sticks it to them twice per year. We'll see how long he stays. But yeah, I'm on board with it. I just wouldn't have personally done it.
We just have to hope that Aaron Jones scores more touchdowns or accounts for more points than Greg Joseph accounts for points in the two matchups against Green Bay this year. I think that's the important thing. Now he has to score like 2 touchdowns. That's 12 points that he accounted for, and then we just have to not let Greg Joseph kick foul field goals against us. That's the goal. So me and Will privately have discussed that we are going to say that Greg Joseph goes 100 if he does get that job. He's going to go 100%. Against the Vikings. I don't know how he'll do in every other game, but it just feels like he will not miss against the Vikings. And he does kind of have a clutch gene in him. I think we've seen that over the years.
That was the one really good thing about him was after that Cardinals fiasco in week 2 of 2021, the clutch gene arrived and it never wavered.
Yeah, and I still say, and I mean, look, the guy's probably like 60 now, but Kai Felbath, he won my heart when, because everyone, the miracle game, everyone obviously remembers the miracle, but no one remembers the drive before that. Like, Kai Felbath hit like a 45-yard field goal, or maybe it was longer than that, to take the lead back, and it was like that. That ended up setting up the miracle and everything.
Yeah.
Like I don't know why we got rid of him, because he couldn't make an extra point. Boo-hoo, it's 1 point, but I digress. Let's get into Shaq Griffin, because this is I don't want to say controversial, because it's not like the Vikings, went out and made him the highest paid defensive back in NFL history, but he is a guy who he's a former Pro Bowler. He had some good years in Seattle, and then as he went to he got his bag, as the kids say nowadays. Seems like his play dropped off. He's dealt with injuries, a back injury. Took a lot of time from him in 2022. He's, like I said, he's bounced around to a few teams. Where do you see him impacting this defense? Oh, is this another? And I'm trying to remember the guy's name, but was it Jawan Johnson that used to be the Patriot that we signed in free agency, and then it looked like he might.
Juwan Williams.
Thank you. I think I got him confused with Jalen Johnson or something. I don't know what I did there, but
love him.
Yeah, right. But yeah, so Jawan Williams, and in Stouter training camp, everyone said he was going to be. Oh, he might be the Stouting corner. He's really shown it, and then he didn't even make the 53. So, do you see that as maybe he's just a body that adds a little bit of competition in camp, or do you see him as a legitimate contending, he might be, CB1 to start the season on the outside?
So Jawan Williams is still on the roster right now. He's CB7 or something like that. So no, I don't see Shaq Griffin like that at all. I think when we look up week 1 against the blah blah blahs, whoever they're playing, I think it'll be Byron Murphy and Shaq Griffin on the outside with Mekhi Blackman in the slot. They have 5, just like we talked about the running back thing. These are 2 similar positions where they got a lot of dudes, and we think they're good, but we're not 100% sold. So from Shaq Griffin, Byron Murphy, Mekhi Blackman, Andrew Booth, and Caleb Evans, that's 5 guys that can play. And that leads me to believe that this room is probably set. Otherwise, They could have found a way to donate a third rounder to the Chiefs for L'Jarius Sneed. They were allegedly interested in that. I don't know what held them back. Probably the big payday that they would have to give L'Jarius Sneed. I think Shaquille Griffin, now this will be 4 teams in 3 seasons, so there's obviously something not absolutely wonderful about him. But the way that he'll be able to play man coverage, I believe the Vikings want to do more of that because that is the Flores way. They didn't do a whole lot of it last year. I think that Shaq Griffin is going to end up being kind of a fan favorite and being relatively steady. He's not going to be a Pro Bowler, but they just have so many guys. Usually in an offseason like this where we're starting to get apprehensive about cornerback, it's because they don't really have that many guys. And we're like, oh, shit, they're going to have to get somebody in the draft, I guess. They don't have that. They have the depth. And so competition will hopefully breed the top 2 or 3 guys that will see the playing time. And I think that'll be Griffin, Byron Murphy, and Mekhi Blackman. And then I will hold out this grand hope for Andrew Booth, kind of like Lewis Cine or what we did over and over for Irv Smith, where we think, yeah, this is going to be the summer. Because last year when I watched Andrew Booth, I made specific plans to watch him. He looked good to me. So I think this Vikings cornerback room is pretty well set, mainly because the free agents are down to nubbins. I mean, they got Shaq Griffin. That was kind of one of the last big prizes. If they draft a quarterback high, they're not going to be able to get Quinion Mitchell or somebody. So I don't think this is a great cornerback room, but it's not shitty. So we will hope there's enough pass rush this year that will kind of offset the pressure on the back end.
Right, and obviously the signings of, Jonathan Guinaud.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard it both ways, and I don't know which is correct. I haven't went and watched Texans games to figure it out. Although I wouldn't have to watch many because he did have 11 and a half sacks. So he was clearly getting some production. His name was being called. But him coming in, Van Ginkel coming in. This is the debate that was happening, when those signings were announced. Would you rather have Jonathan Guinaud and Andrew Van Ginkel, or would you rather have Danielle Hunter? Like if you could pick between, the 2 options, because we could either keep one or get the 2, which one would you rather have done, or would you have went the route that Kwesi went?
If you would have asked me last year on this program, name your 2 favorite Vikings, I would say Harrison Smith and Danielle Hunter. So what I'm about to say isn't anti-Danielle Hunter, but I like the value of having 2 guys that are seemingly guaranteed to effectuate quarterback pressures, whereas, after Zadarius Smith started to slow down 2 years ago, we've been, probably 25 straight Vikings games of, hey, it's Danielle Hunter and some other guy that we hope is going to be okay. And usually that's DJ Wanham, who did pretty well. Marcus Davenport never got off the ground. And so I am excited to have 2 edge rushers in their prime that, as long as they're healthy, because there's not a ton of depth at edge rusher, when they're healthy, we can have it from both sides of the line, where it felt like for the last season and a half, it's only Danielle Hunter. And if you get lucky, Wanham has a good game. Or if you get lucky, Davenport plays. I like having the 2 for the price of 1, and I understand completely why they did this. The Vikings had an offer into Danielle Hunter that was similar to what he ultimately signed in Houston, but he didn't make the decision on day 1 of free agency. So the Vikings ran the risk of being too loyal to Hunter. Boom, he signs with the Texans late that Tuesday afternoon. The Vikings have 0 starting edge rushers on the roster, and then you're starting to say, hey, can we get Jadeveon Clowney for $10 million? And can you get half-ass solutions? They had to make a bold choice, which is roll the dice and hope that Hunter comes back, or get 2 guys on day 1 of free agency within the first hour of legal tampering. So going into this season, I think Hunter will be wonderful in Houston. I think he'll be great for the next 3 years, and I wanted the Vikings to sign him back. But knowing that you were going to get the value, especially with Andrew Van Ginkel at 2 years, $20 million, and then a guy who had the same type of numbers per efficiency metrics as Hunter and Greenard, who's 3 years younger, yes, I would take the 2 for 1, and that's mainly because I guess I'm scarred from the last season and a half of just having it the Danielle Hunter show. I'm glad to have equity on both sides.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%, and I like that you said, they needed to make a bold decision, because it reminds me, and look, this could blow up, and Van Ginkel and Guinaud could, account for 5 sacks between the 2 of them, and the Vikings defense could be terrible, but the Vikings have kind of a history of this, and if you go back to, I think it was this season before Mike Zimmer came along, but it might have been like Zim's first season or off season. Rick Spielman made the decision like within a 2-year span of like, Kevin Williams, thank you so much for your service to the Vikings. We're letting you go. Jared Allen, that you should be a Hall of Famer. It's shocking to me that he's not, in my opinion, but we're letting you go, and we're gonna let you walk, and we're gonna let you go. Be bad in Chicago, and I think Carolina was in there as well. But
you got Super Bowl.
Yeah, and so like you kind of have to make these decisions to say goodbye sometimes. That way you can introduce youth and bring in better players. And now historically, at least in my lifetime, it feels like the next guy was already on the team. Like when Jared Allen was leaving, it was like, oh, well, we've got like, this Brian Roberson guy. We've got this Everson Griffin guy. When it was time to let Griffin go, it was like, okay, well, we've got, this Daniil Hunter guy who, he's young and good. And so now we're just finding that youth elsewhere. And so we're having to pay a little bit more for it. But I think that I liked that. I liked how you put that, bold decision to let Daniil go, but good decision because ultimately, you're kind of in a like Old West shootout with 31 other teams where it's these guys can sign any second, so you can't really dilly-dally in some of these situations. And so if Daniil Hunter's taking his time and being cryptic and unfollowing the team on, Instagram, you've got to make a decision and be like, Guino just said he would come sign right now for this dollar amount. Like, we should probably jump on this. Plus, Van Ginkel is like, we've got him on the line. We just have to finish that deal up. So I liked that a lot.
The other thing real quick is always habitually during the summer, if they get into training camp and they get paranoid about the depth, there's always like 5 33-year-old edge rushers that are chilling. Usually it's like Justin Houston and some other guys. This year it'll be Yannick Ngakoue. Carl Lawson's out there. There's a Flores special, Emmanuel Ogba, who's not great. But there's always depth guys in the summer at edge. I think the Vikings will have the money if they want to do that. What I hope they do, because they blatantly ignored defensive tackle, at least making a splash. I don't know if Calais Campbell will play for a team with a rookie quarterback, but that guy never slows down. And he's the last best chance that the Vikings have at the interior of the defensive line of signing a big name. I asked Bryant McKinney last night if he thought that Calais Campbell would be interested in the Vikings, and he basically said maybe. He just spent the last, 3 years with the Falcons, who weren't a Super Bowl contender. But I was disappointed. It seems like nobody ever hears these shows or nobody cares that defensive tackle always has some schmuck at the 3 technique. I hope that they would have spent a little money on Leonard Williams or Grover Stewart. But no, I guess they wanted Christian Wilkins, but then the Raiders blew that offer out of the water.
Yeah.
Once and for all, I want the next step, next offseason. I want them to get a defensive tackle who can get after the quarterback and not just some guy that nobody's ever heard of.
Yeah, I was banging that drum pretty hard. I was on the Christian Wilkins train big time. Also, now that because he re-signed with the Ravens. I can't remember the Ravens guy that was up. I know that his name was difficult. Justin Matabuike. I was banging the drum for either one of those guys, and I was comparing it to those off seasons of old when the Vikings were moving off of Christian Ponder and entering into this new territory. And I was like, one of the biggest signings they made was they went out and they signed, oh man, I just lost his name. The big defensive tackle. He scored a touchdown against. Thank you, Linval Joseph. I was about to say he scored a touchdown against Philadelphia and had to hit the oxygen, but like they went out and they gave Linval Joseph like a 4 or 5 year contract, and it was a big money deal, and they poached him away, and it was like, yeah, look, the guys you have been drafting and taking these mid to late round picks on haven't really been working out. Sharif Floyd is your only other choice at the time. And of course, we know, what would end up happening with him tragically, but they said, yeah, let's go spend money to fix the middle of the line. And then the Viking, I'm not saying that, Linval was the reason those Vikings defenses were so good, but he was a big part of it. And he was a yeah, Linval in his prime was a massive reason why it was really difficult to run the ball on some of those defenses. And so I think neglecting it is, like you've said, that needs to be the number one thing in the offseason. And maybe as we get into more draft conversation and move away from free agency, maybe, Arizona trades with Denver. They don't want to trade, in the conference, and none of the top 3 teams will move off of their pick. And so the Vikings don't want to trade up to take the 5th quarterback off the board. Maybe they end up in a situation where they stick and pick at 11 and 23. Is there anybody on the defensive side of the ball that absolutely knocks your socks off if they are still there at 11? You would jump all over it. For me, and it's risky, but I'm putting myself in the Kwesi shoes, it's Leatu Latu. I know we just signed 2 edge rushers. That guy's ridiculous. I mean, and I know there's health concerns, but you know what? He's coming in his rookie year, and he can you can really make sure that his neck is okay. You can really strengthen it up, and then in year he can be like rotational. Maybe Van Ginkel's the rotational guy, honestly. And then he could. I just love Leatu Latu. But is there anybody like that for you?
Yeah, I want to say one thing. Linval Joseph was probably, what is he, 35 or so? The Vikings have 0 nose tackles after Harrison Phillips, and I don't even really know if he's a textbook nose tackle.
Yeah.
So remember Linval's name. He loved the Vikings. If they need a depth guy, like for one more stop in his career when we get there this summer, remember Linval's name, because
it feels like he always walks out in Minnesota too. Like there's always it's always around training camp. He's walking out like near the in the state of Minnesota.
Yeah.
And everyone immediately is like, he's signing. They're getting Linval back. And like you said, he's 35 now. So
Yeah. So I would remember him because I wouldn't make anything of it, but there's no other nose tackles unless they just sign Sheldon Day back, who's kind of their old reliable practice squad guy. All right, so at number 11, this is such a tough question for me because I would be so depressed that they didn't make their splash up the board. I would be paranoid they were going to spend the 11th pick on Bo Nix or Michael Penix, even though Penix just had a wonderful pro day. So I'd almost feel relief, no matter who it was, if it's not Bo Nix. If you asked me, and the Vikings have completely fooled us all, they're not trading up the board, Dallas Turner is the guy that I would want there, but I don't know if he'll be there. He's young, he's fast, he can stop the run more so than most rookie edge rushers, and Alabama products rarely flop. And usually edge rusher is like the most reliable thing to scout. Like, you don't see too many edge rushers with first-round draft stock that are like, oh, that guy was a bust. That's usually reserved for quarterbacks. And it takes defensive tackles a long time to develop. A lot of times we get mad that they don't show up right away. But on defense, my guy would be Dallas Turner, although I think he would probably be gone. There's just so much offensive priority at the top of this draft. If we had to have a consolation prize with no Drake May and no J.J. McCarthy, I guess I would be excited by Dallas Turner, but that would also probably mean that we have a season of Sam Darnold, and then whatever they decide, Michael Pratt as the guy they're grooming.
Right.
I don't know. It feels way too obvious to me that the Vikings are going to trade up the board. I think what blends both worlds is the Chargers at number 5, because you only have to give up your 2 first rounders, in my opinion. And there's no way in hell that the Chargers are going to pick up the phone and do business with the Broncos or the Raiders before the Vikings, because that will probably mean that Jim Harbaugh is gift wrapping his Michigan quarterback to a division rival. I don't see that happening. So in the end, I don't want a defender at 11, but if we've all been hoodwinked, I would take Dallas Turner, and like within a week after I'm done drying my tears, I'd be like, hey, sweet, we got this awesome edge rusher.
Do you have anybody on the interior of the D line? Like I really enjoy some and I've held it both ways. So is it? I want your opinion. Is it Jozon Newton or is it Johnny Newton? Because the commentators always call him Johnny, but then in the draft process, all the draft guys are calling him Jozon. So I don't know what to think anymore. But like he's somebody that I'm like, okay, if the NFL tones off trades and we have to stick and pick at 11, I'd be okay with Jozon Newton at 11 and Michael Penix at 23 or whenever it is. Like I could live in that scenario. I think. Is there anybody inside that tickles your fancy?
Yeah, I would like Johnny Newton as well. 11 might be a little bit of a stretch.
Yeah.
Byron Murphy, I do like. He's University of Texas. I do like his profile, and I think. I basically enjoy the idea of any defensive tackle that can be gettable. Last year, I think I ended up in my final mock draft as a prediction having Brian Breesy as I thought the Vikings would trade back. I was wrong. They sticked and picked with Addison, which was awesome. So yeah, I would say either one of those, Johnny Newton. I think that's what he wants to be called. It's a little bit easier for marketing purposes. And then Byron Murphy would be cool. But realistically, I think it'll go quarterback. Hopefully Drake May at 3. And then you're looking at their next pick being at the end of day 2. And then you're looking at dudes. Maybe Braden Fiskey falls that far. After that, it's like some of the mid to late rounders like Mason Smith from LSU. So there are about, I think, 9 or 10 defensive tackles that will go off the board, for the end of round 5 or 6. And if you listen to Kevin O'Connell this week, wherever they caught up with him, was he in Orlando, wherever he was? They asked him about defensive tackle, and he specifically noted that this draft looked like it was pretty deep for a defensive tackle. So I think they know. That's when he was asked about, I think somebody tried to hint about Christian Wilkins, and he said, we there was a guy we made a run at, and I think wink, wink, we all knew that was Christian Wilkins. Yeah, there's a lot of depth there, but none of them, I mean, it's hard to get a defensive tackle to be a really good starter in year 1. You have to give those guys time to develop. That's why, selfishly, I'm kind of glad that the Vikings won't draft one this year, because fans will call him a bust right away. Yep. Like, if the guy isn't good right away, let alone a defensive tackle, people are eager. It's like they enjoy saying, "Oh, hey, that guy's a bust."
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm one of those people. I love declaring guys, suck. Like, I think before Jordan Addison caught his touchdown in week 1, I was like, haven't heard much from that rookie. Probably should have drafted Will Levis. Not that's a complete joke, by the way. But I have to clear my name a little bit. But yeah, so we've done the quarterback talk a million times, so I'm not going to rehash it tonight. I know that we've done the, hey, who's a mid-round guy you like, and what do you think of this guy, and what do you think of that? I think if you don't know mine and Dustin's opinions on this year's quarterback class, it's on the internet to find our opinions on this year's quarterback class. So let's talk about, I know you said the Chargers are a sweet spot for trading up because, if Arizona is in love with Marvin Harrison Jr., they're going to take him, and then they should be. I agree with you. So unless Denver or Vegas is willing to sell their soul, Mike Ditka with the Saints style, every pick of the draft moving up. I like what you said about that. Let's do some trade speculation. It came out, all 3 teams in the top 3 were not moving. They loved the quarterbacks that they thought they were going to be able to get, and they were not moving at all. Then it very quickly came out, hang on, they actually, they like draft picks, and it felt like they all kind of overplayed the bluff. And they all kind of, like, they put out, like, tell them we have no interest in trading. And then the Vikings were like, okay, we'll talk to Arizona and talk, settle on J.J. McCarthy. Like, we don't feel like we're losing that badly here. And then all of a sudden the teams start coming out and it's like, well, actually, Washington loves draft picks. And Magic Johnson wants as many draft picks as he can get. And, so what are your thoughts on trading into that top 3? I think trading up for J.J. McCarthy seems the most realistic at this point in my mind. But what are your thoughts on, a New England or Washington trade? Would you be willing, are you that in love with a Drake May that you would be willing to give up like future first round picks as well as 2 this year? I've seen a lot of people saying, that 2025 first rounder should be untouchable. It's hallowed ground. We have to keep it. So what are your opinions on spending capital? How would you approach this?
I would spend the 3 first rounders to New England to get Drake May, because just like I felt about CJ Stroud last year, I believe Drake May is going to be good. I don't have like pens and needles about it. With J.J. McCarthy, I don't feel that certainty. I do think McCarthy will be good, but I agree with you based on how he right now, even though, within 4 weeks, he might be up there at 2 or 3. That'd be sweet. And Drake May is the guy we're talking about getting at a discount, at 4 or 5. But I just don't think general managers will overthink this enough to pass on Drake May. So I agree with you that McCarthy is the most attainable, probably at 4 or 5, and I think that is music to Kwesi's ears, because then he only has to spend the 2 first rounders and maybe some deal sweetener like a fourth somewhere or something like that. I, of course, want to hang on to the 2025 pick. We all kind of cynically assume that this will be a down year because it's Sam Darnold and Drake May. But I'm here to tell you the Vikings usually don't do really bad years. And even if we just, look at Sam Darnold, we're like, that guy's a moron. He's not going to do anything. I bet there is a way that O'Connell squeezes 7 or 8 wins out of that guy. That's just the Viking way, whether it drives people crazy or nuts because it, brings the draft pick into 11 or 12. Of course, I would rather keep that pick. And that's why I believe that Odafe Mensa will look at it and say, hey, Kev, you love JJ, right? And Kev's like, oh yeah. I mean, JJ McCarthy, the way that the Vikings run a locker room with the optimism, the culture, it just Kevin O'Connell, eternally happy. That's what JJ McCarthy is. And people always seem to gravitate toward people that are like them. So when I try to talk myself into a prediction being Drake May, I always come back to that Kevin O'Connell and JJ McCarthy are so similar as humans. Like, the guy had a smiley face on a shirt at his pro day, and Kevin O'Connell would probably do that if he was allowed. So I ultimately think it'll be the Chargers at 5 for McCarthy, and the cost will be this year's 2 firsts. And I swear to God that will feel like it's free because we won't have to spend next year's draft capital. And by that time, we will have owned that second first-round pick for about 6 weeks. It'll feel like, hey, we got McCarthy, just, that was house money, even though it technically wasn't. But I want to be wrong. I want them to get Drake May because the way that he throws it, he's only 21, he's 6'5", he can get out and run with it. He doesn't have the weakness of throwing deep outside the numbers like J.J. McCarthy. For those reasons, I want McKay, but if I had to predict it right now, I think it would be McCarthy.
Yeah, I have the pins and needles about Drake May, and it is because, and this is what I do to myself. I listen to these like draft experts talk, and I don't know why, but it really, and maybe it's because I'm like an idiot, football fan who I have a caveman brain. I'm open to admitting that, and so when I hear analysts talking about how, this guy is willing to take a check down, and I'm like, you play at North Carolina. What do you mean you're willing to take a check down? Like, you're playing Wake Forest. Like, that's a basketball school. What are we doing taking check downs? Like, why are you not pushing the ball down the field a little bit? And so it scares me a little bit, but then you see him make some of these throws, and like, I'm not as like confident in Drake May, I think that you are, but like, I've kind of gotten away from saying like, this guy will be good or this guy will be bad. And I've started to say like, I see the path for Drake May to be really, really special. And I see it for Jaden Daniels as well. JJ McCarthy, I think, is a little bit more difficult. Like you said, there's some struggles there. I think he struggles to throw with touch. I think he is more of a project than what you would believe just reading articles where you see, Drake May's going top 5 in every mock draft on, God's green earth nowadays. So I think that Vikings fans should be hoping that we get up into the top 3 picks, not necessarily, oh, well, JJ McCarthy's, he's just as good as those guys, because like, I don't know that he is. I mean, he might be, who knows? It's quarterbacks. Nobody knows anything. So, like, I truly believe that. But I don't know. There's definitely some apprehension on my end about everyone except for Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels is the guy that he's still my guy. I still love him. I don't care that he has a weird elbow and he had some tough throws at his pro day. I would like to see any other quarterback in this year's draft class, really any quarterback in the NFL, do what Jaden Daniels can do with his legs, aside from like Lamar Jackson, who's the only other guy I think in the NFL that can do that kind of stuff and also throw the ball that way. So I don't know. We shall see. But Dustin, I'm gonna pass it off to you. Unless I guess I'm just gonna pass it off to you to do final thoughts. Stand on your soapbox. Talk about whatever you want to talk about. Doesn't have to be football related. I'm sure it will be because you are just a football junkie. But yeah, man, the floor is yours.
Let's see here. I'm really curious to see what they do at WR3. Not because I'm worried. It's just that there's so many in-house mid options. And the way that the Vikings do business, kind of this offense-first enterprise now in the last 2 years, it's a little weird that they haven't went and signed DJ Chark or Tyler Boyd. I mean, there's a lot of guys that if they get to May or June, they're like, oh shit, we need a WR3. They can just go get a guy like that. But I'm curious because TJ Hawkinson's probably going to hit the PUP list in early September. And normally, WR3, you're like, okay, cool, it's KJ Osborne. Or before that, hey, cool, it's Chad Beebe and BC Johnson. But this year, it feels a little bit more important because you're looking at 4 to 8 games without Hawkinson. So in-house, you have Trent Sherfield, who I guess could do it in a pinch. Brandon Powell, who I guess if you put the WR3 emblem on his chest, then maybe give him the targets. He is that guy. Or Jalen Naylor, who's really fast but's never healthy. Interestingly, this draft, especially if you're a fantasy football nut, there are a lot of dudes in the mid to late rounds that will kind of get those Puka Nacua sniffs that were like, oh, yeah, I bet you he's like Javon Baker is the one that everybody loves. So I'm interested to see from the offense team building perspective, specifically because Hawkinson probably won't be in the game plan for the first month. I want to know, what are they going to do? Are they just going to say, you know what, Brandon Powell, it was a no-brainer. Yeah, that's why we signed him again. Or do they, every Vikings fan loves when they draft a receiver. It doesn't matter where he comes from in the draft. He's going to be the breakout star. So I'm interested to see when the rubber hits the road, probably on that Saturday draft weekend. Which one do they go for? Do they go for Jerry Rice's kid, Christian McCaffrey's brother, Javon Baker with a really sweet last name? Like, I want to see which one could it be, because that guy should have a realistic chance at playing a little bit as a rookie. And then the way that all of these contracts are structured, if that guy's good, he would be WR3 who was always open, because Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson are on this team. So that's the one that we haven't covered tonight. I don't spend oodles of time thinking about WR3, but on the stuff we haven't covered tonight, that one is intriguing because the offense has a lot of opportunities in those Hawkinson-less games.
Note, by the way, that the two most intelligent, I'm gonna say the two most intelligent Vikings podcasters in the world did an entire show together tonight, and we did not even bring up that Justin Jefferson still has not signed his contract, and that there's that whole situation. And you know why we didn't? Because we're intelligent and we understand that it's gonna get done. At least I think it's gonna get done. Like it's
such a no-brainer. If CD Lamb got his deal 6 months ago, if Tristan Wirfs was all wrapped up, I would be like, what the hell? What is the deal here? But these things, regrettably, take time. And Kwesi Adofo-Mensah said about 6 weeks ago, he said, we got so close at the end of September last year. Remember when that Saturday, I think it was, when Brian O'Neill's contract got converted? They did that because they were like moments away from getting it done with Jefferson. And then I never bought into Jefferson needs Kirk. Like, I mean, really? He needs Kirk Cousins to be a good receiver? No. That's just his buddy. And of course he wanted him to stick around. I can tell you right now, if Justin Jefferson is verifiably in the rooms chatting with KOC and them saying, oh yeah, look at Jade Daniels, that guy can fling it. Hey, he went to my school. Or look at the way that Drake May can do this. It's every leader for over a year has said, like, this guy is we're going to for sure pay him handsomely. I think right now it's just kind of a arms race for wide receivers to figure out, CeeDee Lamb is probably waiting on Justin Jefferson, and then Jamar Chase is waiting on Justin Jefferson or CeeDee Lamb. I think that's where we're at. And then on Jefferson's end, he probably wants to do his diligence and make sure, like, hey, you bitches said you're going to draft Drake May, well, go do it. And then I'll sign that. I'll sign that Sunday once I know he's in the house. It would be the most ludicrous thing in the world for a football organization, especially the owners, to say, you know what? This guy we have is on every commercial. This guy is Offensive Player of the Year. This guy can be borderline MVP, and wide receivers never win those. But you know what? We can win without him. They're not going to do that. Even if they told themselves quietly, we can win a Super Bowl without a sweet wide receiver. That guy brings up so much money into the Vikings piggy bank because he's just him. And then I love the aspect that Justin Jefferson brings in so many new fans, like kids, like you and I, or well, me in the 90s. Like, he's the kind of guy that that's their first memory of sports. And I didn't give a shit about that when I was like 22, but now as a father and I'm 40, I want new fans to come in, and Justin Jefferson is just the guy to drag all of them in. So yeah, it's gonna get done. I know it's taken a year, but it will be done.
I don't know if you follow this, but this is it's mandatory that I mention that I live in Cincinnati every show. So, it just came out either today or yesterday that Jamar Chase, the Bengals have started trying to talk to him about getting a contract extension and doing that. And he basically told them, like, we're not talking until Justin Jefferson signs a deal. Because that immediately becomes like, I want, $5 million more than that. Or I want, and like, that's the report now is that Jamar Chase won't even talk about signing an extension until the Jefferson deal is done. And, I know that there are some Vikings fans that, like you said, think, yeah, we can go win without him. And I believe you can win without Justin Jefferson if you have, if you draft Drake May or Jaden Daniels or JJ McCarthy. If you get your guy, like the Chiefs got Mahomes, and I hate to say Mahomes because, he might be the greatest to ever play the position, but, they end up paying Mahomes after he gets a few years with Tyreek Hill, and they're like, okay, Tyreek, we are now going to get a bunch of draft picks for you, and we're going to move on, and we're still going to win Super Bowls because we have the quarterback who can kind of backpack any receiver. Marquez Valdez-Scantling is a 2-time Super Bowl champion because of Patrick Mahomes now, and that's just kind of insane to me. So I think...
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think Justin Jefferson, the Vikings would be idiots to get rid of him at this point because whoever it is going to have a really sweet gig knowing that they get, okay, well, Justin Jefferson, even though he's being triple covered, still has a chance to be open, so I'll give him a glance. But if he's not, in 6 weeks after the pup expires, I have TJ Hawkinson to throw to. I have Jordan Addison to throw to. I have maybe even a good wide receiver 3. We'll see how that position plays out. But there's just so many weapons here for a quarterback. I think it's one of the best landing spots. And to get rid of Justin Jefferson and immediately just go from being like with Justin Jefferson, you have the best weapons in the league. I think you can have that debate. And if you get rid of him, it's like, okay, well, I mean, I think every team has like a Jordan Addison on their team. And maybe Jordan Addison is much better than I'm giving him credit for, but he's not Justin Jefferson, or at least he doesn't appear to be.
Well, the beauty of this, and I don't know if this affected Kwesi's decision-making on waiting until now to get a quarterback, the absolute beauty of this is you can line up Jefferson's next contract with the rookie quarterback contract. You're going to have 5 years, assuming it's a four-year deal for Jefferson, because you still got the fifth-year option. You're going to have 5 years to align this wide receiver, who's the richest in NFL history, with a rookie quarterback contract. This is why they didn't re-sign Cousins. I'm going to guess when Kwesi came in and looked at all this and said, all right, this 2022 quarterback draft class sucks, besides Brock Purdy, who nobody knew about. The following year, we couldn't quite get up to get Bryce Young like we wanted, or we couldn't get Anthony Richardson. But you know that this influx of quarterbacks was coming in this very draft. And by the way, this is when Jefferson wants his money. Bada bing. We don't have to re-sign Kirk. We have the luxury now of paying Jefferson all of this money and then have it offset with a rookie quarterback. That's why I really want the rookie quarterback to get his feet wet this year so that, hey, if Drake May starts 9 games, we can realistically look at 2025 and say, this is going to be the year we're going to start to make a run for it, because it will have this wide open window of 4 years. And then by the time Jefferson's deal starts to wind down, he'll be 28, 29, and you're starting to wonder, all right, well, his prime's over. Do we want to pay Drake May at that point $65 million per year? And then Jefferson can walk if he still has it. It's just, I don't know if it's lucky, but it's serendipitous timing that because Kirk's gone, you have the luxury of keeping Jefferson and getting the guy you identify as the quarterback of the future.
And honestly, if you do sign him and you end up having him for 5, there's a good chance you now have 2 chances to find your quarterback, because if one of them stinks, you can cut ties with them after like 3 seasons, and then you can bring another one in, and you've still got 2 years of Justin Jefferson to try it again. And by the way, if you draft, I don't want to say Drake May because I don't want to like put your guy down, but if you draft JJ McCarthy and he really did need, Michigan's defense and running game to be at all successful, and he stinks like Zach Wilson, Well, guess what? You're probably picking high enough that the next guy, whoever it is gonna fall right into your lap, and so you can take the next guy, and he comes in and he gets to play with Justin Jefferson, who's just a little bit older, and T.J. Hawkinson, who's just a little bit older, and I guess Jordan Addison might no longer be a Viking at that point because he might, he said on draft night, let's get paid. So I don't think he's going to be looking to take a pay cut to win a Super Bowl.
But that's still 4 years away before
right.
He's done.
So he would have. So you would realistically have like a year with Addison. So the quarterback's rookie year, we're talking about the same weapons that this guy would get a chance with, whoever it is. Ouch Manning, maybe. I know he'll probably declare by then, but yeah, you know what I'm saying. I don't know who's going to be draft eligible in 2027, but I guess we'll have you on. We'll pencil you in tentatively for 2027 as the thing. By the way, just to make you feel a little bit old, the guy who got me loving football and to fall in love with the game, it was Adrian Peterson. I was a little kid when we drafted him, and it was just like watching. It was incredible. I mean, it was just crazy to watch.
God,
he was special, man. He was really special. And I don't really remember the Moss years, but going back and watching like highlights and sometimes watching like entire games of Moss, I don't know how you lived anywhere. I don't know how you could tone on the TV and not immediately be a Vikings fan watching this guy do what he did. I mean, that's especially like in 97 or 98, whenever that's insane to me how good he was. My final thoughts out: Randy Moss and Adrian Peterson, really good at football, and Justin Jefferson right up there with them as like really good at football, one of the best to ever do it in my opinion. I've been Jordan Hawthorne. He's been Dustin Baker. Dustin, really quickly plug like your social media, your YouTube channel, plug everything that you got really quick.
VikingsTerritory.com is where I and about 6 others write on a daily basis. And then each weekday and sometimes on Saturday nights, we record on YouTube a show like this, Vikes Now. We have a lot of cool guests. And then just regular old Twitter is at Dust Baker. And all day, every day, it's Viking stuff. Why don't you coordinate with Jordan and see if we can either get on the Monday right before the draft or the Monday after, because that would be elite content.
Yeah, I think that is definitely going to have to happen, and I look forward to seeing what happens in that draft, as I know you do as well.
Oh God, I can't wait.
I know. I haven't said it as much this season because I think it jinxed us. But last year during this time, every show I would say this is when Super Bowls are won, because you're making all of these decisions to bring in some no-name guy, some bullcrap for you. Dan Feeney ends up stouting a game for the Vikings in the playoffs and has the game of his life, and the mullet's flowing, and it's. I love this time of year because it pays off, man. It's like the stock market. You put a little bit in here, and then it pays off big later. And, you put in a whole bunch now, and then it pays off later whenever, Jonathan Guino has 17 sacks this season, and Van Ginkel comes in with like 10, and you have the best pass rush duo in the league, and we get to walk around and feel good about ourselves. This was a great show. Like you said, we'll have you back on, obviously. That's a no-bueno. We just have to figure out the dates. Make sure you guys tune in next week. Me and Will be back to like a regular format for the show, and other than that, this is Load the Box. This was a fun one. Skol, y'all.
Skol.